Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're talking about one more time the 2026 California governor primary election prediction. We did go over the most updated numbers as of yesterday or a few days ago, but we do just have a very important update to address on this race that I feel like I wanted to get out and do a video about. So today, well, obviously today is Wednesday, June 10th, but yesterday Tom Steyer, the Democratic candidate that was trying to catch Steve Hilton in this race, released a statement on both Instagram and Twitter, I do believe, saying, "Dear friends, it's now clear that we do not have the votes necessary to advance the general election in November. First, before any pride in what we have accomplished or disappointment in what we didn't, I want to express my gratitude to all those of you who knocked doors, made phone calls, came to a town hall, or trusted me with your vote. Thank you. Your support and dedication to your fellow Californians humbles and inspires me, and I'm forever changed by the months we spent together. Every day reminded me of what I knew on the very first. The Californians are special, deserve a state they can afford to live, work, and play, and imagine a future in. For the rest of my life, I'll be proud of the ways we fought for and with working people, earning endorsements from unions representing nurses, educators, carpenters, home care workers, hotel and restaurant workers, and the votes of almost 2 million Californians who dared to demand more for each other and the state they love. Together, we fought for a California that belongs to the people who keep it running every day, and we insisted they do not settle for a system that protects corporate profits at the expense of working people. I'm proud of how we never compromised our values or lowered our sights for what California can and should be. I'm proud of the enemies we made. We forced Chevron, PG&E, Meta, and so many others out of hiding. We forced them to show who and what they always stood for, and we challenge the greed and cowardice that allows them to raise costs, suppress wages, pollute communities, and treat workers as disposable. In this race, those corporations revealed that they see a government that puts working people first as an existential threat, even when proposed by a billionaire. By spending $55 million, the most ever against a single candidate in California primary, they showed the lengths they would go in order to protect a status quo that only serves them and their profits. And now the genie is out of the bottle. This campaign proved that the business as usual depends on politics as usual, and there's no going back. We must continue to fight for a system where democracy serves Californians, not corporations, and we do not have to have a billionaire to run on a single payer or on breaking up monopolies or calling out a corrupt system when you see it, because people are fed up with a system rigged to benefit billionaires and leave them behind. They see what's happening, and they know who to blame. It's why so many people voted for our platform, and it's not lost to me that's also why so many people just couldn't stomach voting for a billionaire. It's hard to blame them. I've always been an optimist, and today I remain an optimist. Nothing this campaign fought for is far off. These dreams we dreamt together are not too big. Californians deserve a life they can afford, and they deserve for it to be in California. My commitment to this fight didn't start last November, and it doesn't end today, because the work of winning a better, fairer California is not the work of the campaign, it's the work of life. For now, we must stay focused. Donald Trump is the embodiment of the corporation's craven, soulless, profit-first model of politics, and it's absolutely essential that his handpicked candidate does not hold the keys to California. It would be a travesty for Steve Hilton to win the governorship, and Californians must unite behind Xavier Becerra to ensure he does not. To my supporters, thank you for everything. When I promised to fight for you, that was not a campaign promise. It was a promise, and I am a man of my word. I'm on your team forever. I wasn't born a billionaire. I won't die a billionaire. I'll spend the rest of my life working alongside you to dismantle a system that only benefits billionaires. Today, my message to you is simple. Pay attention. Know what you deserve and know who's on your side. Understand who the villains are and say their names out loud. Continue to demand more for your leaders in your government until they give you the California and the country you know you deserve. I will be with you all the way. With gratitude, Tom." So obviously a very big and bold statement from Tom Steyer in the race here. A lot to unpack in that statement for sure, but the most notable being almost like that. I mean, obviously he just lost the race, so it's very somber, but a very somber tone from Tom Steyer, who it doesn't just sound like he lost his race. It sounds like he has no intentions of running for public office again, is the way, to me, when I read that, how I interpret it. Saying that he'll spend the rest of his life, blah, 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 like doing stuff. It doesn't sound like someone that's really interested in potentially running for things again. So that was an interesting part of it. But number two obviously goes without saying. He talks about going after the big interests and corporations and such, and also going after President Trump and not allowing Steve Hilton, the Republican candidate to advance the general election, to beat Xavier Becerra in the race, calling him obviously Trump's handpicked candidate in the race. So not really too much of a surprise, but seeing Tom Steyer officially drop out of the race, concede out of the race, now that Xavier Becerra and Steve Hilton have both been declared winners from Decision Desk HQ, which they were the winners on June 8th. But then also, as you look at the headlines here on the last few days or so, in the last few hours, Steve Hilton edging out Tom Steyer in the California governor's race was very big news yesterday from a lot of the AP sources, even though Decision Desk did call it yesterday. The AP sources officially did call the race for Becerra and Hilton and Tom Steyer with 91% of the vote in, so there's still a decent amount of votes left to go. Steyer was going to fall short of reaching those numbers that he needs, and it wasn't without certainly a significant effort by Steyer, as Steve Hilton currently has 24.97% of the vote. Tom Steyer is 22.52% of the vote. Don't forget, on election night, Steyer was somewhere around 16 to 17% across the state. He got up to 22.52% and now is within 2.4% of, for him, potentially catching Hilton. But as the results came in, it became very clear that Steyer was not doing well enough in the areas where he was doing well. It just wasn't enough in the areas he wasn't doing well, and he would have had to exceed it on those margins even more. So ultimately, Steyer sees the writing on the wall. He knows he couldn't reach that threshold, and he does ultimately drop out of the race. And I thought it was very significant because obviously Steyer was running, and you see here, we can even look at the polling and the markets for a while now. When Eric Swalwell was in this race, it became very clear it was Hilton and Swalwell were the two leading candidates. And then when Swalwell scandals break, he drops out of the race. There was a little bit of time where Tom Steyer was the second candidate in the race. He was at 14.6%, Hilton was at 18%, Bianco was at 13.6%. Xavier Becerra was only at about 12.7%. And that was after like April 12th to 13th here, where we see Eric Swalwell ultimately drop out of the race. Steyer was the known Democratic candidate. Xavier Becerra was well at the bottom here, even surging to 6 points here. Steyer was the leading Democrat. And as things went on very quickly, even with Steyer's late surge towards the end here, it became a two-person race between Becerra and Hilton for the general election. Now, falling just a bit short, getting locked out of the primary against Steve Hilton by about 2.4% or so, Steyer made it a very close fight and a very significant fight. And there was questions in the final few days, with still 9% of the vote to go. Would there be enough vote overall for Steyer to try and get in? Well, now at Los Angeles at over 95% in, Steyer gained on Hilton by a significant amount here, but there wasn't really a lot more votes to come in. San Bernardino, same thing, 95% in, not a lot left. Even we can look by total registration here. San Diego County, Steyer did better, but still at 21.23%, not enough what he needs. Orange County was big on this, 17.56% only for Steyer, not nearly enough. Chad Bianco nearly leading over Xavier Becerra in Riverside County. It's possible we may end up seeing Becerra jump Bianco here when everything is said and done, but there's not anywhere near enough vote for Steyer. And even today, there were some votes out of San Francisco for Steyer, which he's ultimately winning by 13.7%, but he only increased his margin over Steve Hilton here by about 12 points, when he needed to get up above 17% to really have a chance at this current point in time. So the math just became increasingly more and more obvious that Tom Steyer was not going to be able to come back. He did exactly what we thought he would do on election night, though, or even the few days following election night, which is he didn't have enough votes to come back, but he had enough votes to close the gap. It went from like a 6-point lead for Hilton, and I think it was something like 500,000 or 600,000 votes, to about a 2-point lead. And when you look at the overall votes here, you're looking at like a 200,000 or so lead for Hilton over Steyer. Steyer closed the gap, but ultimately Becerra and Hilton advanced to the general election. And that's where things essentially from a competitive standpoint really do end. Now, Steyer, one of the big points of his statement was saying you cannot allow President Trump and his handpicked candidate, Steve Hilton, the Republican, to have a win. And he threw his support behind Xavier Becerra, who I'm sure, even though Xavier Becerra does not check every single box of policies that Tom Steyer would like to support, he would rather see a fellow Democrat in Becerra win than Steve Hilton, the Republican endorsed by President Trump, win. Goes without saying. Now, the good news for the Democrats is California is still a very heavily Democratic state. It voted for Kamala Harris by 20 points in 2024, Joe Biden by 29 points in 2020. And then the governor's race in 2022, Gavin Newsom won by 18.4% against the Republican Brian Dahl, and he won in 2018 by 23.9%. Make no mistake, California, now that it's a Democrat versus a Republican in the general election here, this is from election night, but for California, the governor's race, without a doubt, it'll be a safe Democratic win for Xavier Becerra over Steve Hilton. Republicans honestly had pretty strong voter turnout in this Republican primary. Make no mistake about that. They obviously I would say probably exceeded expectations here for Hilton getting into the top two. They did very well. Hilton's support is about 25%. Bianco's about 10.21. That adds up to roughly about, 35.1% of the vote, 35.2%. With the rest of the Republican down ballot candidates, they probably amounted to Trump's 38% of the vote that he got in 2024. So again, even with Republicans doing very well and exceeding expectations here, they still technically got outvote on the primary numbers, 62 to 38 in favor of the Democrats. So this is where the point that was made of, well, Steve Hilton did very strong. Steve Hilton won a lot of areas here. You see a lot of areas in the map, like San Diego's going red, Orange County's going very red. Even you could look at Inyo going red, or maybe Colusa County or Plumas County, these areas that are very barely going red for Hilton. You have to remember it's a open ballot of all the Republicans, all the Democrats at the top of the ticket. And what happened was Hilton was able to consolidate a lot of the Republican support. His next closest challenger, Chad Bianco, only had 10%, whereas Becerra, the leading Democrat's next challenger to Tom Steyer, had 22.52%. So you see a lot of red across the state of California, even a place like San Luis Obispo, and even Ventura as well. And you're going to say, well, are they going to vote Republican now in the general election? And I would tell you, no, they're not. Because it's going to be a general election, one Democrat, one Republican, no other candidates, no independents, no third parties, one Democrat versus one Republican. And in the state of California, it has been tried and tried and tried several times. I would be shocked if this race in California falls under that 15-point margin in 2026. So with that, I just want to give you this update on the California governor's race. We've done a lot of videos now on this race, but Steyer officially dropped out of the race. I want to give you that final update. We now know the general election is set. We know it's going to be Xavier Becerra versus Steve Hilton. And honestly, we know how the race in the general election is going to go. There are a bunch of governor's races up in 2026. There's 36 of them. California will not be one of those. That's considered a battleground state. For now, though, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit like and subscribe if you did. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in a future video.